An underdog is a competitor thought to have little chance of winning a fight or contest. But more importantly, underdogs are a key aspect to any competitive sport or game in the world. It's easy to root for the team that wins it every time, but rooting for the underdog forces you to go through heartbreak after heartbreak until finally, victory falls onto their lap. Heading into this year's Identity V Stellaris Internationals, B4U was the glimmering hope of NAEU. For years, this team has clinched international spots, dating as early as the Call of the Abyss 4, with members as far as A and O's KOA 2. Yet, despite their regional dominance, they failed to capitalize internationally, with last place finishes from KOA 4 to KOA 6. Then, a glimmer of hope showed in KOA 7 with their first international win, only for them to only place dead last once more the following year. IVS didn't do them great either, as they placed at the bottom 7th to 8th place last year. Heading into this year's IVS, the expectations remained the same. A bottom place finish, but maybe they'll get lucky and win one match before being eliminated. Their first matchup was up against Southeast Asian representatives, Future. FT has had some controversy, which saw changes to its roster during the Identity V tournament, with players Meow Pie and Hessian exploring other options. Despite these struggles, FT won in the Southeast Asia Regional to clinch their spot in IVS, albeit with another multitude of roster changes as Survivor Kuga and Hunter Him were unable to participate. One key element of FT, however, was their coach, former Weibo Gaming Hunter and one of the best to touch the scene, YMM. But with so many roster changes, B4U actually had a sizable chance to try and win this first match. Things already looked great after Sprinter's surprise wax artist took Yuan's professor off guard, downing him with ciphers around 30% progress. Now, Sprinter might as well be the heart and soul of this team, as his dominant performances have constantly made B4U a threat against other local and even international teams. He has a ton of nicknames, but my favorite perhaps is Dong Shi of the West, the greatest hunter of NAEU, and truthfully, nobody gets close. Now, despite Sprinter's incredibly early down, FT survivors were quick to recover and somehow managed to get a single escape, one that would haunt them for the rest of the matchup. B4U survivors were now up against X Yang's Goatman, with Green's Puppeteer taking the first kite. The kite was relatively average, but it was the rebound right after that turned what seemed to be a 3k to 2k situation into a potential tree escape. Green had been one of the most solid survivors in NAEU, but he wasn't always in B4U. He was most well known for his stints in Fusion, a team that was second to B4U during the 2022-2023 era. However, Green was with the team during 2024, and this year he makes a return as a solid kiter for the team. Paired with the support of his fellow teammates, Green's kite was enough to secure a tree escape, with B4U immediately making a statement this IVS. However, it isn't over just yet. Round 2 gave the map to FT's side, and after Sprinter gets another 3k, X Yang breaks out his breaking wheel and, in dominant fashion, got the 4k. The rounds were tied, and now FT also had the point lead. B4U needs to win the third round. Sprinter is up now. He runs the Nightmare Pick, a character he's been training during the off time between IVT and IVS. Unfortunately, he could only secure a tie, meaning that B4U survivors were the ones that needed to secure the win. The fact that Spencer only 3K'd during the first match was now haunting the team. If Spencer had secured a 4K early on, they would have the point lead and would only need to secure a tie heading into round 3 second half. Instead, they're forced to go for the win, and despite a strong early kite from Green, it wasn't enough.
Will be able to elbow pad to the psychologist. And is unfortunately hit, and that's a 4-man elimination for the side of FT Hunter, and that gives the win to FT.
B4U was devastated. This was their match to win, and yet they fell short. Players were frustrated. Sprinter at this point wanted to retire following IVS.
When we lost, everyone was like, "I'm retiring." Sprinter texted me an essay, like he texted me, "I'm sick of losing. I'm just quitting."
They'd soon learn their next matchup was against KL, the HMT powerhouse that took out the region's favorites RD during their IVT 2025. Moving forward, B4U could not afford to make any mistakes, as one loss sends them home, a feeling they're perhaps too familiar with. However, even more devastating news came their way. Just 5 hours after their loss to FT, Schmidty received news no one should ever get. Yet there was no time to rest, no time to grieve. The pride of NAEU was on the line once more, stakes higher than it had already been. So heading into day 2, Schmidty asked his team one simple request.
And I told the team, and I was like, if there's one thing I want from each and every one of you is to give it your all for KL.
It is not the one who has everything you need to fear, but the one with nothing to lose. Heading into the match against KL, the stakes were high. It was clear that B4U had a strong chance to win this. However, KL did have a former IVL hunter in their team, so the NAEU favorites could not let their guard down. Sprinter would get his first 4K in the entire tournament, using Excitement Goatman to counter both Novelist and Knight from KL's side. Charon was looking like he had a chance to get a 4K of his own following an incredibly early down on Schmidty, but the triple tide strat did favors for the team to stall time, and Charon failed to gain any form of middle game momentum, being forced to settle into a tie. Sprinter once again secures another 4K in round 2 with Opera Singer, but Charon turned on the gears and narrowly gets a 4K back with Hullabaloo. With that, we head into round 3 with B4U in the lead. Green once again steps up for B4U, and his kite manages to secure a tie for the team, meaning that all Sprinter needed was a single elimination. KL goes for an incredibly wacky team comp with Mind's Eye, but it just wasn't gonna work. Sprinter selected Wax Artist, and it was a 4K everyone saw coming. With that, B4U now secures their second international win in basically the 5 years they have been competing. However, the road only gets harder from here on out. Even angels can lose their wings. Heading into day 3, their next matchup was none other than ZETA Division, the reigning champions of this year's Call of the Abyss tournament. They became the first team outside of China to win internationally, and now they were looking to score back-to-backs. ZETA Division was seen as saviors, the players that defied the status quo, and now B4U had one mission: to defy defiance. The game immediately starts with a bang as Spencer puts on an absolute masterclass of an IV match. Despite the late down, Spencer proceeds to terror shock first officer, use Blink to hit fire investigator, stopping him from rescuing and forcing all 3 survivors to try and rescue. At that point, Spencer was just 2 ahead with everyone basically injured and took the 4K. ZETA's Hunter Peter picks the Goatman, and it was looking like a tie scenario, but Peter clutches the endgame and all of a sudden, a 4K was drawing near. He manages to cut the professor off before he exits the gate. Unfortunately for him, the professor was none other than Lion. Lion was B4U's newest pickup heading into IVS. You see, neither Yudo nor Umi could participate in IVS following their IVT run, and they were desperate to find a 4th to fill in. Fortunately for them, F&E recently dropped a survivor from their roster, a critical mistake as that survivor was none other than Lion. And this guy wasn't just good, he was a prodigy. And all I need to prove that is what happens next.
Oh my goodness,
He's out!
no!
He's out!
Oh my
No,
God,
he's not out! He's not out!
He's caging you! He got the shell!
stun!
He got the shell!
stun! He got it! Lian!
He's leaving!
MVP!
Oh my gosh! Thank God that...
The gate clutch meant that heading into round 2, B4U was in the lead. They decided to ban Hullabaloo, which meant Peter's legendary opera singer was out in Chinatown. And it's Peter's opera, arguably one of the best opera singer mains in the world right now, which unfortunately resulted into a 4K for B4U's survivors. However, Spencer responded back with the same abnormal 3-6 opera and clapped back with a 4K too, which means B4U was heading into round 3 with a lead. In round 3, Spencer pulled out his wax artist once more. Unfortunately, he can't replicate the same magic he did against FT and KL and gets 3 escape. That means that all the pressure was now on B4U's survivors. A tie is all you need to secure a win against the KOA champions. Miko Melody selects Anne, one of his best hunters, and goes for Lion's lucky guy. Roland gets caught going for the rescue, forcing Schmitty to go for a backdoor with no tide. Luckily, Lion gets a well-timed tram to stall additional time. Roland goes for the rescue once more, but gets doubled down and is forced to use self-heal. Unfortunately for Miko, the last Cypher had significant progress, and he tries to continue pressuring the Cypher, but eventually it gets primed and popped as soon as he hits the first officer. In most cases, this would be a tie game. However, Roland had no items, no self-heal, and Anne's cats were off cooldown. It's a 3K game. He teleports directly to the other gate and gets to down and chair Schmitty. Green is forced to heal Roland before they can make any progress with the gate, as Miko finds Roland once again to down him. Green goes for the rescue and with Tide can stall additional time before going down. Miko and the B4U survivors continue to play patient. Miko spots out Roland, but instead of downing him, he instead teleports back to the chair. An incredibly pivotal mistake, as Schmitty was still distances away from Green. Miko panics. He tries to find Schmitty, but during that time span, Green's chair time was slowly coming to an end, and Roland was opening the gate. And now, B4U was seconds away from beating the odds. Roland opens the gate, and
Roland's out! The dungeon! Smitty's at dungeon! It's a 2-minute... It's a win for B4U!
B4U eliminated ZETA!
ZETA!
true time, they have not. True time, they have failed. But now, they stand.
NAEU's #1, B4U.
It is only through constant loss does winning feel so sweet. B4U has defied odds beyond a scale we have never seen before. But if you think the story ends here, well, it doesn't. 'Cause it was time for the next match. You see, in day 3, if you come from the loser's bracket, you had 2 matches. Prior to B4U's match against ZETA, MRC had just taken out FT, and now MRC were looking to score once more. Unlike before though, B4U weren't the underdogs anymore. They were now on the same level as the professional players in China and Japan, and heading into this match, no one truly knew who could clinch a top 3 spot. It was clear that B4U was reeling in the adrenaline that came during the first round, as Sprinter immediately pounced with a 3K Opera on Lakeside. Bailu, MRC's Hunter, brings out the Ivy, and despite a dangerous endgame, B4U pulls through with a tie. NAEU takes round 1. Arms Factory was the next map, and with Ivy globally locked and Gopin banned, Bailu chose to play the opera singer, resulting in a tight set where Bailu was able to stop B4U from getting to the late game, resulting in a 4K. Unfortunately for them, Sprinter's legendary Ivy now makes another appearance on the same map they crushed ZETA in. But MRC was more than ready, with a great kite by Nanako followed by a patient endgame that resulted in Sprinter getting 3 escaped. MRC looked to end the run here and now, securing round 2 and taking the point advantage. Round 3 was MRC's map to pick, and they decided to select Leo's Memory following a Moonlit River Park ban. Sprinter was up first. With all the meta characters off the table, Sprinter decided it was time to go back to one of his oldest mains, a character some people knew him best since 2021. It was none other than...
Your donut is really good.
Yes,
There we
yes.
go! Here we go, chat.
Yes.
Here we go, chat. Oh, W's in the chat for Dream Witch. It was all until
Yes.
the end.
Sprinter decides to chase the journalist first for a couple of reasons. Journalist might have Tie Turner, albeit she doesn't actually have it in this game, so Sprinter choosing to chase her could help with removing potential Tie Turners. More importantly though, Journalist can't use her skill to try and body block due to Patroller being a great counter towards it. Hence, after Hua Ting took the first hit, Patroller was used to then down him. With Journalist down, First Officer tries to go for the rescue, and manages to get it in time before Sprinter can get a Patroller bite on him. Hua Qing gets hit and decides to simply run as far away from First Officer Cypher as possible. Unfortunately, Sprinter still manages to chair near First Officer Cypher, and MRC was left with no choice but to rotate. Meteorologist held the second tide, and Journalist manages to get a sizable rebound kite to try and swing the 4K game into a potential tie. Now down at 1 Cypher left, Sprinter uses Blink to down the Meteorologist, and instead of chairing, chooses to try and pressure the Cyphers. However, MRC only had one objective in mind: remove the leeches at all cost. Despite taking 2 free hits, Sprinter was now left with only 1 follower and a 30-second cooldown that forces him to commit to 1 target only, allowing for survivors to either pressure Cyphers or reset their health. He finally manages to down and chair Sing H, but at this point, it's too late. Cyphers are primed, and in normal circumstances, this is a tie game. But tell me, in the entirety of this video, when has it ever been normal circumstances?
And now the gate is open. Sheldy, can he pick her up in time? She does have flywheel.
Oh, he picks him up in
The spin
time.
call.
Okay.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
okay.
Oh, Nara goes down! Oh my god, Chocho! Sprinter able to get a 4K? He does it!
What the hell?
Sprinter could not believe it. The chat could not believe it. Hell, even I could not believe it. History was unfolding right in front of our eyes when every time it felt like it was over for this team. With that, MRC was forced to play for a 4K in the third round. Bailu opts to play a normal gamekeeper, but it felt rather jagged and rough against the NAEU Phenoms. B4U secures the necessary tie to bring them another upset. If you thought the win against ZETA was a fluke, their win against MRC just sealed how legitimate their run has been. And yet, it wasn't over. B4U still had one final day, and a chance to go for a real Cinderella run. It was time for day 4 of IVS. Unfortunately, despite upsetting the KOA champions and one of the best teams in China, the road somehow keeps getting tougher. RC was the team that not only had one of the most bombastic off-season moves with the return of Alf, but a team that recently won Japan's regional league, IJL. Yet, despite these accolades, the team somehow saw a loss against IVL 9th seeds ACT, who despite having a relatively weak bracket, has managed to secure themselves a championship slot. Out of all the teams that underestimated B4U, RC was clearly not one of them. It was immediately obvious at the first round that RC had done their prep. Aka decides to pick Goatman with a trait we rarely see with the character. That is none other than Patroller, a trait meant to counter the team composition. And it showed, as despite Green's stellar performance this IVS, he succumbed quickly to the Japanese hunter. Rolling gets a free first rescue, but the second rescue didn't go as smoothly as Schmitty was forced to go early. Ciphers were clearly not enough, and after getting a down in chair on Schmitty, the survivors were handed a 4 elimination. Sprinter was up next, and chooses to pick the Goatman as well. But Unpi showed why RC were still the favorites to win despite all of B4U's upsets, as Sprinter has yet to down him with 2 ciphers remaining. Late game approaches with all of RC survivors still up and running, and Unpi chooses to die all the way to the corner, stalling time for RC to open the gate and get the dungeon. Despite all of B4U's achievements in this tournament, they start with a mountain to climb, an 8-1 deficit to end the first round. Round 2 saw Sprinter return to the fray with a 3-9 warp hullabaloo. After the first rescue, Sprinter tries to go for a double down on Mercenary, but City's elbow pad bolts him out of danger. Sprinter was forced to use warp just to catch up with Priestess, and if it weren't for a mistiming on Soba's end, Sprinter might have actually needed to cover more distance if Soba were to go back through the portal. Coordinator uses her gun to secure the next rescue, and despite no portals from Soba, a Palitson and additional support from Unpi gave Soba additional time to rebound Kite before being sent away. The time wasted meant that the ciphers were healthy enough for RC to go for a tie, and despite Sprinter almost being punished for playing too aggressively, he still managed to secure a tie. Unfortunately, this wasn't great for B4U at all. Heading into round 2 second half, it was almost necessary for B4U to at least 3 escape this round 2. Losing this game would mean RC immediately wins, and while a tie can push B4U to a third round, an 8-1 deficit is not an easy thing to come back from. Aka would select Opera Singer in hopes of finally ending B4U's Cinderella run. Pressure was once again piling up on B4U's end, and unlike before, it seemed as if it was finally catching up to them. Schmitty's early down meant that B4U was now at a backpedal, and with no legitimate support other than maybe some body blocks from journalists, journalist and a gun from green, winning this match was highly unlikely. Roland gets the first rescue, but Schmitty had no tools to kite past Tide-Turner. With 3 ciphers still remaining, Lion was the next rescuer, and seemingly B4U had decided that going for a win in this match was too risky, and Fire Investigator chooses to pop his last effort in hopes of avoiding damage for Journalist. With Schmitty now gone, it was looking like a tie game. All up until Aka's blink had Roland down incredibly early, and near a cipher in progress too. Green gets caught trying to open a chest, and Aka decides to pivot to green following the rescue on Roland. Ciphers now had significant progress, and Aka had his trade on cooldown with no way to stop the ciphers. The problem for B4U, however, was that he didn't need to. After Journalist's first rescue, he quickly realized that both Journalist and Lucky Guy had no borrowed time, meaning that despite there being a prime cipher, there was no good time for B4U to try and pop it. Lucky Guy almost gets the vault that might give them a chance to do just that, but unfortunately Aka connects the hit during the animation. Lucky Guy is out of the manor, and all Aka needs is one more to seal the deal. Roland is now the chase, and being the mercenary, he had a chance to kite this out due to Mercenary's passive trait of his damage being delayed. Unfortunately, he takes the hit way too early, and with little progress on any of the gates, B4U was seemingly doomed to lose this match. This is typically the part of the video where I go into another crazy plot twist with some random motivational quote. But unfortunately, even all good things come to an end. Lion doesn't have anything to help him rescue this mercenary, and after getting caught by Aka, is unable to kite any further, and eventually, B4U's run ends with a bitter loss against Reject. RC would go on to win the entire tournament, getting Japan's second international title and finally getting Alf the trophy he very much deserved. B4U, on the other hand, just fell short of giving NAEU its first finals appearance and maybe even its first international title. And while some may say that this was quite an unfortunate ending, I believe that it is the start of a new era. For the longest time, NAEU has always been considered the weakest region in Identity V, a reality we rarely see in other esports titles or really any other competitive game. It was also an emotional roller coaster. B4U's members were not just fighting odds, but fighting their own personal battles. Everything was against B4U, and yet here they were standing before us, showing how even at the most dire of times, they proved that they can compete at this level. Honestly, I don't even consider myself a B4U fan, but whether you do consider yourself a fan or not, it was not hard to root for this team at all. Because in the end, it may be easy to root for the favorites, but it's only when you root for the underdog do you get to see competitive games for its grit, mentality, and its hardships. It's only when you root for the underdog do you get to see just how stacked the odds are against the average. And it's when you root for the underdog do you get to see that everyone, even the underestimated, has a chance to win it all. Thank you for watching.